All right, all. Forgive us, we're live. I'm going to actually open up this council meeting for, what's the date? February 3rd.
February
4.
Yep.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All you, Twyla.
Okay. Counselor Albert.
Here.
Is Counselor Kobe attending?
She is actually ill.
Oh, okay. So we'll go down and Counselor La Rochelle?
Here.
Counselor Ward?
Here.
Counselor Lunt?
Here.
And Counselor Fellows?
Here.
So then, is there a motion to excuse?
I will make a motion to excuse for illness.
I'll make a motion to excuse for illness, and I think he said
He's
last
traveling, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
he's
so-
traveling.
So Councilor Ganong and Councilor Kobe, I'll second that.
I'll second.
Got the first, we have the second. All in favor?
Order passed. 5-0.
Next item, Twyla.
Good news and recognition.
Anybody got anything that they'd like to share tonight?
I wasn't there, but I'll talk about the winter. Did you talk about it last time?
No. No, it was actually the very coming Saturday, so please.
Well, I wasn't there, but I'm just saying.
Anybody on Winterfest?
I think that's good.
I'll just, even though I wasn't there, I'm sure that I heard from the Recreation Department head. I'm struggling with words tonight. Mark Stevens said it was a pretty big success, greater than last year. I heard the frying pan, what is it? Curling. I think that's what it was. It was a big hit, along with some other stuff. So thanks to all who attended, and nice job, the Rec Department.
Anybody else? Hearing none, moving forward, Twyla.
There are no public hearings, audience participation and response for agenda items.
Anybody wishing to express anything that's on the agenda, please step forward and state your name. Seeing no movement, moving right along.
The consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have any item removed may do so now. Seeing none. Order 2020, number 22, to approve the municipal accounts payable and payroll warrants number 01242020 for $5,111.79. Number 2001W3 for $15,050.66. Number 200130 for $151,613.14. Number 01302020 for $6,179.04. Number 242020 for $283,942.64. And also the school payable, accounts payable and payroll warrants. Number 31 for $3,204.07. Number 1055 for $13,221.29. Number 1054 for $39,214.05. Number 1056 for $7,334.37. Number 1057 for $66.24, and number 2013 for $101,534.42, along with the minutes of January 21, and to set the polling location, polling hours, and voter registration hours for the presidential preference primary election on March 3rd, and to set a public hearing for February 18th for the Railroad Restaurant and Pub.
I'll make that motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
5-0. Order passed.
Next.
Under Council Orders, Resolutions, and Ordinances, Order 2020, number 23, the Transfer Station Compact Trailer Purchase.
Good evening, everyone. Randy Sear, Public Works Director, Transfer Station Solid Waste Director. As you know, that last year we asked for permission, well, last month, but we've been searching for quotes on a new compact trailer. We've received quotes, lowest quote being, and what is it, $71,000? Do you guys have it out front of you? I didn't bring it with me, but there were three quotes ranging from $101,000 to the lowest bid, I believe, was around $75,000 or $73,000. What I did with these three companies, I made them all bid exactly the same. I took the best steel that we could get. We had issues with the floors before. So now all the steel was the same, all the gauges were the same. Everybody was apples to apples. And this is what we come up with for the results. So my Spectre, I believe, is the one that
Spectre
has the bid.
75, 878 is what you're recommending.
I just left it on my desk before I came in. But it's my recommendation that we go with Spectra and order the new trailer as it's 6 months out.
Is that who we actually have purchased from in the past?
We have not. Spectra is actually the son of the people that own Stecco. So
Okay.
he was pretty familiar with us and our build, and
Okay.
we're gonna, we're probably gonna give them a shot. J&J was just way out of the game by 30 grand.
Right.
So what we did is we took a lot of the specs from the J&J trailer, with the high wearing steel on the bottom, and instead of just going with high tensile steel, we went with the better grade steel on the walls and the floor and the pusher, and then the rest of the specs were all the same as far as how it was built and how it was gusseted and everything else, and how the walls were all partitioned off, so everybody's on the same.
So all three quotes actually meet your specs.
Yes, they do. Yep.
Was that a question? Just a cough.
Just cough.
Any other questions of our PW director?
The rest of the specs look the same as chassis-wise, brakes, axles, all that stuff, landing gear, everything seemed to be pretty compatible.
Everything else is exactly the same.
Yeah, it looks like the ribs and the outside ribs, the 6 inch with 3/16.
Yeah, everything is all, that's
pretty much
correct.
right to spec. Yep.
Right to spec, yeah.
Yep.
We wanted to make sure that everybody, because looking back at the previous bid sheet, they weren't, J&J and Stecco weren't built the same.
Yep.
Stecco being the lesser quality at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just because the steel quality was not, probably, they weren't comparable, you know what I mean? So that's how they get the lower bid.
And just one other question also, and I didn't see it in the bid, and maybe I was looking warranty-wise. I mean, do they stand behind the product pretty much the same? I realize it's probably a smaller company now since he's actually, but...
There's a manufacturer warranty against certain parts, like the hydraulic, the hydraulic cylinder, the tanks, and the pusher, and all that. As far as them guaranteeing the floor or the walls, I'd have to check into that.
To a certain probably manufacturers,
Limited warranty, yeah.
Exactly for
Yeah.
Yep. That would be the only concern I would have
Yep.
is if one actually had a different,
Warranty than the other.
stood behind it a little bit differently, and it is a hard use product. It's kind of like buying a plow. You know what I mean? It's
Pretty
one of
much.
those things where they can only warranty so much, right?
Right.
But they can't really guarantee from abuse, and
I
that's all.
believe
it
on
gets.
workmanship wise, it'll probably be about the same across the board.
Yep.
And I guess there's certain warranted items, like they said, like the hydraulic system and stuff like that. But I can get all that in writing.
Yeah, to me, I have no problem approving for the specs that we'll put out. It was just the warranty would be one of those things where it'd just be kind of nice to know if, comparing apples to apples and make sure that we actually going to be guaranteed if there is some type of manufacturing problem.
I guess the Hardock steel is what they're specking out for
Yep.
the floor and the sides because of
Yep.
the wear. It wears a lot better than the high tensile steel.
Yeah. Isn't it just the floor and the roof? For some reason, I didn't think it was the sides. I
It's
thought
the
it
sides.
Oh.
It should be the roof, the floor and the sides,
Yeah,
because
for some reason
that's
I
the
thought
one
it
that
was-
gets the most wear.
Interesting. Yep.
Randy, I appreciate that you actually went to the level of actually standardizing all of the bid specs. Given this being directly in my wheelhouse of what I do, what I would encourage you to do is actually take it one step further and put together a bid form that you require.
Mm-hmm.
And on the bottom of that form, I can show you an example of it. I'll send it to you tomorrow.
Yeah, that'd be great.
The fact is, put in there what your base amount is, and then you have a place for the warranty and all of that information right on one page.
Right.
Because what I'm seeing in this is the fact that your key terms are going to be low responsive bid. If you don't meet our specs, first being that you actually didn't provide it on the form that we actually require, you don't actually have to accept the bid. What I'm glad to hear in what you actually have here is you have 3 bids that you feel confident meet our specs, but you can actually formalize that and actually be able to get the kind of things like the warranty information that we're looking for. Just
True.
helps you to dial it in.
Yeah.
No, it's a huge step forward because I know when you last talked about this 2 weeks ago, you were concerned about getting bids and getting bids that were comparable.
Right.
You got 3 where you only thought of 2 at that point. So I think one of the things you will also see too is when you put formalization to it, the fact that when you have those kind of inconsistencies and you allow them in your bidding process, people get pissed and they don't want to deal with us.
Right.
And the fact that happens because if somebody actually can substitute lesser materials and you're going to accept it because it's a low cost bid, but you ask for one thing and something else, that inconsistency is where people get frustrated.
Right.
So it will help moving forward. So
Yeah.
if I don't,
No,
send me
it'll
the
be-
text. I know you got my contact information. I'll kick it to you because if you put that out there for standardization, I think it's going to take you a lot further to
Right.
be able to get these kind
I
of
can
things.
use it on different things I
Yeah.
buy too. So.
Yep.
Yep. Beautiful.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
one clear message, and it makes it so much easier because this day and age, with everybody as busy as they are and prices as they are, we can ill afford to actually frustrate business partners.
Right.
So I know you're on that same page too because
Yep.
you've
Nope,
actively
that's true.
tried to re-engage people.
Yep.
So
No, I appreciate that.
Sounds like we'll get a trailer anyways. That's good, right?
Right.
for the listening dot in the corner, the fact is we allocated 100,000 for 2 different sources. We're well below that threshold. Any other questions of our PW director here?
Motion.
I need a motion.
Make a motion that we accept the bid from Spectre Manufacturing for $75,878 for this dump trailer.
I need a second for discussion, if you don't mind. No payment actually until they meet a certain threshold with delivery.
They did not say anything about down payment.
Okay. And if they need anything because of the nature of manufacturing and you have to do so, I would accept it and get graduated, but it needs to be reasonable.
Yeah.
The
I
fact
mean,
that-
on the other ones, there was a 10%
Yep.
down payment, which I don't think is totally out of line to ask for, just so they can.
Just a commitment, basically.
It's just a commitment because our specs are a certain size because it has to fit in our facility. So it's not like if they built it, they could just sell it if we backed out, So in good faith, I think a 10% down would be fine if they ask
Yep.
for it.
I've seen it go as high as a quarter to a half, but you're clear what you're getting. And the reason I bring it up is I've seen this exact example 10 years ago or so. We had a company fold up and went left. We had nothing to show for it associated with that. Protecting our interest is the
Right.
priority until they deliver what we're asking for.
Yep.
So by all means, when you sign the contract, take liberties on that, but side is we're not giving you an excessive amount in advance because you got nothing to show for it, especially with a vendor that is new to us.
New to us, yeah.
New to us. They may be reputable there, but the fact is right now we have a specific application that we want to represent our interest.
Yep.
All in favor?
5-0, order passed.
All right.
you,
Thank
Randy.
you.
Thank you, Randy.
Sir.
Next fellow?
Order 2020, number 24, COPS Hiring Program Grant.
Evening, Mark Hagan, Chief of Police. I wanted to talk, if you folks are all set with it, just briefly about the grant and get some of the basics out there, and then answer any questions that you have if you're all good with it. So, as you're aware, shortly before my arrival here in 2016, we had 2 school resource officers for 3 schools. They were servicing 3 schools at the time. Where currently we have 1 school resource officer attending the needs of over 1,300 students is what we're told, and 225 staff, and there's actually 4 schools at this point. So she's stretched pretty thin, to be honest with you. And when the grant got released this year, we thought it was a good opportunity to at least look further into it. The basics of it are this. It's the 2020 COPS Hiring Program Grant. And although it can be used for anything as far as it doesn't have to be a school resource officer, simple fact is we're good with what we have for regular patrol officers. And what we've been told by the federal government is they've really only been using this grant to fund school resource officers for the last couple of years. So it makes sense. I put a sheet out on all of your desks before the meeting that shows some of the basics when it comes to money. And what the grant does is the grant would cover 75% of the salary and fringe benefits for the SRO for the first 3 years of the grant. and after that there'd be a 1-year additional commitment by the town and the school, or the school. Now, what you see in front of you as far as some financial commitments from the town and the school, we threw up 2 examples. One is an 8-year step of a school resource officer, and another is a 4-year step. The reason we use those 2 steps, just so you all know, we would be hard-pressed, as far as the 4-year step goes, we'd be hard-pressed to put anybody in a school that has less than 4 years on the road of experience. Simple fact is they're in there dealing with students, teachers. You need to have experience to be in there to be able to even answer most of their questions, to be honest with you, and you should have experience if you're going to be in a situation like that. So that's why we use the bottom step as the 4-year step. The reason we use the 8-year step is for the fact that if we needed to go outside to bring somebody in, the 8-year step of officers' pay is the highest we can bring somebody in per contract. So those are the 2 numbers that we chose to use. Again, like I said at first, the federal government would pay 75% of the initial 3 years. So if you look at the top step with the 8-year SRO, if you look all the way over to the right, the total with a family health plan would be $90,763. 75% of that would be covered, again, by the federal government. That leaves us with $24,498. We've talked to the school about we're not sure if the town accepted this, at least opportunity to apply for the grant. We don't know if the town would want to cover the 25 or if the town would want the school to cover whatever percentage. So for right now, what you see in front of you is just that 25% would equal $22,690. That's what the town and the school or whoever would be responsible for the first 3 years. You know, if you break it up the way we're doing it right now, if the school covered 75%, the school would be covering $18,375 for the first 3 years. The town would be covering $6,125. Same thing down below with the 4-year step. When we looked at that, we put a health insurance as a single plan, just to show some different numbers. At the end of the day with that, there'd be $20,193 that the town or the school would be responsible for the first 3 years. And again, 75% of that, if it was worked out in that plan, would be $15,144. 25% would be $5,000. You know, there's a few different ways we could look at it, but we didn't want to break everything down in 100 different ways until we knew if the town and the school were interested in it. We're going in front of you folks tonight, and then if you folks were interested, we would then move forward and go in front of the school board next week. To be honest with you, Lieutenant McGee's been working on the grant, and he has more historical knowledge about what the community lost when the second SRO position was cut. So I'm going to ask him to come up and talk to you a little bit about that. While he makes his way up here, I just did want to tell you, the grant, if we decide to move forward with it, and if it's accepted, we're not going to hear anything one way or the other until the fall of this year. So we're really looking towards the fall of 2021. We're not trying to get a position for this year. We're looking ahead, and we'd be talking about the fall of 2021. Also, the town can back out at any time, or the school can back out at any time before we hire somebody. We wouldn't be hiring somebody until the summer of 2021. So we could apply if the town's interested and still back out at any time in the next year for some reason, you know, the unforeseen financial circumstances come up. Our issue right now is there's a March 11th deadline to get even the application in and get the process started. So I'll let Lieutenant McGee talk for a few minutes.
Do you mind if I ask a quick question before we move into that?
Sure.
So just to kind of go back to the point of the hiring piece, if we put up hiring, it wouldn't be necessarily external. We'd go through the internal candidates or whoever put in, and there would be a mix of the both, I would assume.
Yeah, we would look internal first. To be honest with you, I mean, right now we have 5 officers with less than 2 years experience here right now. So now maybe by the time this came out, we'd be in a position where one of them would be interested and qualified.
Yep.
We have 2 patrol officers that have, you know, believe it's 8 and over 13 years experience. So There's a possibility, but there's also a very good possibility we would be looking outside.
I'd say, okay, thank you.
We'd look inside first. It's just
Of course, I just kind of, I thought about what you had just said, which is there was a lot of new folks.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the seasoned folks, you kind of want to keep them there to make sure that, you have folks there to be resources for your folks who are kind of learning the ropes still.
Yeah.
That's fine.
I have several
We have
questions too.
couple.
Just so we can go, and again, I definitely want to hear them more, but and maybe you already said it, I missed it, that's why I want to go back. So this grant, how many years is this grant? Is it a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year?
Well,
With a
we're talking a
4-year
4-year commitment.
Okay.
3 years, the federal government will pay 75% of the officer's salary. Then there's the 1 year that the town and school would be committed to it. So we're talking 4.
Yeah, so that's something that would need to be well figured out ahead of time before we go in, so there wouldn't be these prizes on the other side.
Yep.
Basically, if we decided that we wanted to go, sorry, I didn't.
No, you're fine.
So my thought process in that was we have 3 years of, if we're going to split the 25% with however we manage that 25%, we could also, understanding that we've made a commitment for the 4th year, start stockpiling some money to be prepared for that. And then we can make some determinations.
It's budgetable.
After year 4, determinations can be made whether or not we feel like this is a program we want to continue on and budget for. But at least we can prep for that, up for that 4th year, that final year of commitment between school and.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Counselor?
I can wait till Lieutenant McGee finishes.
I have few, but I'll wait till the end so they may answer the questions.
We don't want to slow your roll, sir.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ryan McGee. I'm recently lieutenant at the police department. Been here 18 years, and back in the day, as you all know from being from town, we had 2 school resource officers for 3 schools, and now we have 4 schools and we have 1 school resource officer. And obviously our primary concern is the safety of this community and our kids, right? I just want to touch base on a couple of, and I got pages of stuff, but I'm just going to touch base on some of the bigger things that come to light for me that we've lost going to 1 school resource officer. One thing right off the bat is, a good portion of our DARE program. I'm sure you guys all see in the news of overdoses and everything else, and Lisbon's unfortunately no stranger to that. Recently there's been quite a few. But we've lost this DARE drug abuse resistance education program in grades pre-K, kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, and 4th grade. We have it in 5th grade still, but that's a lot of grades that these kids should be getting this program, the valuable skills about drug resistance. We've also reduced availability to respond to issues at other schools because the school resource officer may be tied up at one school, and that's a delayed response to the other side of town possibly. Obviously if there's an emergency, clearly patrol would be heading there as well. But we lose that ability to have an officer on both sides of town that can easily and readily respond to the school, and especially having that 4th school, the Gartley Street School. If we had an officer that was at the Lisbon Community School full-time, they would obviously be able to jump right over there for any emergencies. And you got to remember too, there's a lot of days that we only have 1 patrolman on, and they're on the road in town. And if that officer is tied up with an arrest or something major, they can't get right out. And yes, you can say we have a detective in town. There's a lot of times our detectives investigating the crimes that go out of town to go speak to people. So it's all things we got to take in mind, and the chief and I speaking, that we have to be proactive. Some of the things is reduced access for the school to the school resource officer for resources and guidance on issues. Many students, staff, and parents will request to speak to the school resource officer during the day, and that happens quite a bit, and that's great because it's a triangle effect. The school resource officer, and the guidance counselor working together is what helps these families out, and the ultimate goal is to help our kids. Also lost the the Students Against Destructive Decisions advisor, and last reduced availability to respond to other schools when an SRO is busy at one school. Not to mention if they can't respond, I just want to point out that it can take several minutes for an officer to get to that school in an emergency. I mean, there's been recent things on the news as of yesterday and today about stuff going on, threats across our state with schools. And I was just going over these few points, but I'm also just going to throw out there this grant. I mean, it's right here, 107 pages. It's something that's good for the town of Lisbon, especially for now and long term. It's support for the kids, but it's also an opportunity where it gives us, because really it's us, to be able to plan for something that can affect the town for the future, and it gives us 4 years, or at least 3 years of financial support to the 4th year where we're able to take it over. And just like my own budgets, we got to plan for things in the future. So it's a good opportunity. So I'll leave it at that. And Chief, you can take any other questions.
Nope, I have one for you.
Okay.
You guys are great at tracking statistics for everything. Are there statistics that are actually tracked for number of issues that an SRO officer actually has to field within our school system currently?
Yes. You have those numbers right with you? The SRO assists.
I don't know how many, I'll be right up front with you, I'm not sure how many calls herself, SRO Bernard, took this year. I know that in 2019, patrol officers responded 222 times to assist because there were either calls while she was busy with something or there were calls where she needed assistance.
So that number could be that number could actually be greater.
Understated.
Yeah.
That's actually on top of.
Yep.
Go. You had a question, I'm sure.
And again, I was disappointed when we got rid of the second one before, you know what I mean, and tried to push forward just for multiple different reasons. It's just the idea of the visual part of it, to me, makes a big difference when you drive by the high school and there's a police officer, the cruiser parked in the front. I mean, I've mentioned in the past, I taught at some schools out of state Massachusetts where they used to have a patrol car that did nothing but sit at the school, and every day they'd drive around the front and park it there. Whether it was officer or not, it was something that actually they felt was a good visual for people if they were driving up, seeing a cruiser there. The opposite of the case, yeah, it's a good deterrent, you know. Question with this, so is it really required in a sense? I mean, this is a grant that we can use, or the police can use to staff. And in the past, we've basically had a dedicated SRO, and when that person was, say, on vacation or not, they wouldn't be in schools. I mean, it was always one of those things where we didn't. When we had two, it was much easier because you could actually balance it back and forth. Is it really, with two, is it actually to the point where we could actually have more than just, say, one or two designated SROs and actually have people kind of swap out? I mean, to me, I see different people doing different things, meaning the idea that, you know, some of the DARE program stuff could be someone that may not be as actually, you know, have a different skill process than the idea of someone that was actually that's in the school every day as far as answering those tough questions. I mean, I don't really know, just a question whether or not we would actually hire someone to actually say you're hired to be committed as an SRO or you're hired to be as part of that department, and that may actually cycle through being an SRO and actually have it more of more than just a dedicated soul for the school to actually have two. Is that doable or not?
I would say that part of the grant is we have to specify.
You do have to specify.
On top of that, a school resource officer goes to specialized training. So, for one, to become a school resource officer. For two, so that's a couple weeks. Then you have to go to a couple weeks for DARE to become a DARE instructor, and then you have to be an MOI, Methods of Instruction instructor. That's a couple more weeks, and it takes a unique. No two officers are created equal.
Absolutely.
And we all have our own skill sets. And it takes a particular officer to work with children. You know, there's not one of us are created equal, and we all come with our strengths and we all come with our weaknesses. And something in a school setting, you know, anybody can be really trained to do any type of job. But I think this is more of focused on school-based safety and enforcement. It's a different type of policing than patrol policing that I've done for the last 18 years nights.
Yep.
It's a different type of policing.
It would have to do with building rapport with the school and the kids and all that a lot.
Absolutely.
I think it's about relationships, and I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've never done the job, but I think my observations from bringing my own children into the schools, I think it's about building that relationship, so there's a trust factor that goes along with that, and then out of that grows these opportunities, because you're trying to win hearts and minds so that you can, especially when it comes to, I'm sure, like the DARE program, and then at the high school level, the SAD program. Did I say that right, SAD? I think I did. But I think I get that, and I understand your point, Councilor Rochelle, where you're like, can we kind of rotate the resource? But I think when we're comparing apples to apples, you're absolutely right. You need somebody who's going to be able to, it's a unique skill set to be able to understand how to work with adults, faculty, administration, and get them to buy in and understand how this works to benefit the student.
Let me just touch on that real quick. Darren Estes, who some of you know, worked here for many years. He's down in Cape Elizabeth. And he loved working here, and he left for other reasons. But he worked as a school resource officer in this town. Now, I've always worked evenings or nights. And like I said, 18 years. I've literally gone to calls, and we're talking bad calls between their parents, devastating deaths.
Mm-hmm.
And the first words out of the kid's mouth is, "Hey, do you know Officer Estes?" And because that's a rapport.
Right.
And then that turned into Officer Pickard, now Sergeant Pickard.
Yep.
Do you know Sergeant Pickard? Actually, a lot of kids will say, "Are you Sergeant Pickard? Are you Pickard?" I'm like, I got a foot on him. But that's that rapport, and Officer Bernard as well, you know what I mean?
Yep.
Do you know them? And that's because, you know, when I've talked to Jeff when this grant came out and talking to Renee Bernard as well, you know, he said, Jeff, one of the things was every morning seeing the kids get off the bus and greeting them or giving them high fives or fist bumps or whatever they decided. And he got so much valuable information because the kids trusted him over time where they would tell him stuff. Yeah. And unfortunately, you know, bad things happen sometimes, and we have DHS referrals, and we have different things that happen, and it's nice to be able to have that resource where that child truly trusts that officer, because when I show up and they don't know me, I'm just bringing mom or dad away to jail. There's no trust factor there. They don't know. They just know that's their mom and dad, but these school resource officers, they know them. I mean, and they really get to know them. But as the chief pointed out, with as many kids as we have, just over 1,320 students, if you splitting those into two different sections of towns makes it a lot easier to build these reports with these kids, and I think that's a good way for us to be proactive.
A technicality of the grant also is whoever we designate, we have to be able to show they spent 75% of their time in the schools.
Yep. It's understandable. It's just a question I was just kind of wondering. Yep.
I have a couple of questions, some of which are not all that relevant, but we've had, if I remember correctly, we had this ACOPS grant or one like it in the past. I don't know if it was funded the same way or whatever, but I believe that we went through a 4-year situation, and the first 3 were paid, and then we had an SRO. We ultimately lost the SRO. How does that affect our chances if we're applying for this again?
Well, I'm certainly going to bring that up in the grant application because we did have one, and I'm going to have a lot more talks with people, especially if we decide to go through. That way I can get all the details, because I can't stand here and say I know exactly all the details behind that. Obviously, there was funding issues at the time, and I don't know all the details of that. But the fact that we did have one and we lost one, and now we have an additional school on top of that, and it's not like we're not having issues that come up every day. Things do come up, and it's hard to share that between one person, and we don't want to lose that connection with the principals and the guidance counselors working with these kids. That way they better their lives. But you're absolutely right. We used to have one. I don't know the exact details behind it.
Okay. The way this is worded here, too, it says the federal government would cover 75% of the cost over the initial 3 years, with the Lisbon School Department funding the 4th and ongoing years. Does that mean the Lisbon School Department would be funding all of the 4th year?
So originally when I spoke to Chief Hagan, I had read the grant as 75-25, and I assumed it would be 25% town side off the bat, 75% the grant picking up the rest. But nothing is set in stone. It's something that could be 75-25 from day one on that portion, as Chief Hagan explained.
As I remember in the past, we were into the straight SRO program. At that time, the town is picking up 25%, the school department is picking up 75%, and it's about that time that we began to lose. Somewhere after that, we lost SROs. And so that was the question I had, of what the model is, or can it be shaped after you've made the application? And
afterwards, anything can be shaped, but during the grant, it can't be shaped. It's 75-25, and that's per the grant guidelines.
No, I know, I understand that, but
But afterwards, it could be up to between the town and the school.
But even Even that 25 could actually be negotiated between the town and the school. I mean, it's nothing actually states that it has to be one entity to the other paying that full 25%.
Well, if you really want to get in the weeds, I also remember that vacation taking was an issue at one point. So,
But, when it comes right down to it, and to use Council Ward's line, it's all the same basket of goods. Yeah, same basket of goods.
Clearly, in this regard, one of the things that needs to come out of it is they need to demonstrate that 75% of the time is actually in the school.
Right.
So vacation time would not qualify. Chief clearly mentioned that.
well, right.
Right. The question I have, we grew up with Officer Friendly. The fact is that you go right back to Bernie McAllister, and the fact is he spent his entire career with that label. And it's very different than Lewiston, for instance, where the fact is the assignments of an SRO are one step towards where you're going for advancement. And the fact is it's rare that you have somebody that actually retires in that position of the SRO officer. Is there a little bit of a benefit or culture shift that you're looking towards, or which way would you advocate that? Either one of you. Who wants to field that? I can see the benefit because I see, because the fact is, we've had the benefit. The fact is, Bernie helped us. The fact is, and it was still Officer Friendly associate of that when he came to the house. So I can see it even after that. He was doing detective work, but he's actually working that, and that was my connection to him.
So I guess I need a little clarification. Are you asking what's
You're basing
the
it on a
long-term
4 and an 8, but that person may not actually leave here. He may actually, or he or she may be in that position much longer. I mean, our current SRO, and when you go back to even Officer Picard, now Sergeant Picard, the fact is they stay in it a much longer period of time.
Yeah, if you get the right person and everything's going well, they'll stay in a long time. And to be honest with you, if you look at these numbers, it can get expensive when it comes to, I mean, the biggest cost, as you all know these days, is the fringe benefits. Right. So if somebody stays in a long time, the cost will get up there. We're not going to lie about that. That's why we did the 8-year step with the family plan, just to make sure everybody's on the same page. We don't want anybody to say we lowballed and then it was a lot more expensive later on. It can get pricey with any personnel, to be honest with you, but yeah, this position could get pricey just like every other.
Personally, I remember the gnashing of teeth when we lost the SRO, and you mentioned statistics earlier. I think there's not a lot of statistics for peace of mind on the part of parents either.
So to speak to that, I agree with you 100%. I think that when we look at why the SRO was lost, without getting in the weeds on this, because I don't think we need to look back so much, but point taken, there was a majority outcry, and I think due to a technicality in the charter that prevented that from being moved forward to say, hey, listen, we don't want this to happen. There was a clear initiative to state that this budget will stop at this level for the school. So I think that was the challenge that prevented the SRO from staying on board. So I think
it literally dropped down to the fact that the local allocation was going to increase by almost $1 million that year. Mm-hmm. There's hard choices. None of them are pretty for the school budget at that point.
All financially based.
Yeah.
Yep. Right. At this point, given the opt-out possibilities or privileges that we have, I don't know why we wouldn't apply for it.
At this point in time, we have no idea what the federal government's going to say with our application. We're foolish to at least not allow them to pursue. Mm-hmm. And that's the message I want clearly demonstrated to you guys. The fact is, because from the day we hired you, Chief, is the fact is, I call it what it is. It's community policing. I don't care what you want to label it. The fact is the presence in the school is more challenging for you today based on that decision, but your commitment to it hasn't stopped. In that regard, is to how you shape it in creative form. If it's something that we can pursue, by all means, you have our support.
Putting in context, too, that we've added a whole nother school. That's the other piece of that puzzle, too.
Gartley is 3 times the size of the school that it was when we were having this conversation, and then 2.
That's right. They've grown.
So, that's the need is there still.
We're in a unique position. We have such a great rapport with the school department and the superintendent. which is great. And I can't say that about everywhere, but I can say, you pass that sign, we are Lisbon. It's true. I mean, Lisbon's a great community, and this is something that can certainly help the kids and the department be proactive in community policing and safety.
What schools say, Chief?
I'm sorry, what?
What is schools' take on this? You said you've spoken to them.
Just briefly to see about the initial piece, we haven't talked to any council, school board. That would be next Monday if we get the go-ahead from here. So Mr. Green seems interested in at least talking about it. I think we all agree, when I say we all, the lieutenant, myself, and Mr. Green, that right now it doesn't hurt to apply. Again, we can back out at any point up until we hire somebody. So we got time to look at it.
I mean, it's a different place and time. The only person that actually can speak to that is Mark. And the fact is, the business partner relationship with us in the school at that point in time was not good. I would like to say that is not the case today. And the fact that, for me, it's a yes all day, every day. Just for that reasoning. Yes.
And again, I know you probably don't have the information, but I think we see it and we hear it. Out of the 200 some odd reports that you actually had to go to, would you say the majority of those are Gartley Street type calls, or is that mixed amongst the schools, or?
No, I definitely wouldn't say would be the Gartley Street School, actually. It's another school, so it's more kids, and obviously it will add to the number, but it's across the board. I mean, because if Renee's at the community school and something's going on in the high school, the middle school, and we get a patrol officer that's right there in the falls, we shoot them over, but if patrol officer's not there, Renee's shooting across town to go down there, but it's not.
I guess the question was more, before we actually had two, we actually had three schools in essence. I mean, we probably had other programs, but they weren't deemed as much of as an official school as Gartley Street is. It'd just be interesting to see the demand, how much of that is increased since Gartley Street. You mean, and I'm not saying it's bad or good, but the idea is just another equation into that. We just say is it a fourth school, but it does it actually? What's the what type of load does it put on? For one SRO to actually have that fourth school. I mean, it's definitely more work, right? Because it's just another location. It's another set of skills needed, maybe. So
Largest student body is LCS, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and right now, as it sits, she's there. And that's her primary base. That means that
on all day.
Yeah. So it's a split. That was my ask. So she's splitting.
So we have a confidential schedule, obviously for safety reasons.
Yep.
But the administration has not just ours, the school as well. Weekly, she puts together a calendar. That way, the administration knows exactly where she's going to be, because it's important.
Yeah.
It's also important for them to know what Officer Bernard's doing through the week, and she's done a great job with that. She keeps me abreast of everything that's going on as well, and I've gone in to meet with the schools and walk around the schools when I can as well. But she's not just at one place. She bounces around. She meets with she's got meetings tomorrow with parents. Something comes up, she has a meeting with a parent. She's in a closed door meeting, and a patrol officer or myself or whoever will go and handle, keep everybody safe. But like I said earlier, we lose that school resource officer, principal, guidance counselor trio to address situations or be proactive to address situations. But she's done well by herself, bounced between four schools. But I personally feel that she needs some help up there at the schools.
To Counselor Larachelle's point about any one place, it was staggering for me. I've heard it a couple of different times, just what our SRO officer has to deal with at K through 5 on a regular basis. I mean, I know in terminology I probably got it way wrong. The fact is just passive restraint or whatever, addressing any of those issues is just mind-boggling what is going on in our grade school locally.
Yeah, I think the average person would be shocked if they knew some of the issues that they're dealing with, even at the grade school level. Yeah.
This is talking to Officer Picard at the time and that type of stuff. Is the fact is in seeing, because at that point there was still two, and they were transitioning who was going to be taking that role and how to be able to fill it. And the fact that it was an eye opener for me having that conversation too.
So,
Question, as far as like the DARE program and stuff, does that necessarily have to be, I know you said this training, but does that necessarily need to be an SRO officer that would go into school and do that, be active in the DARE program? I know it's nice to have that connection as far as on a daily, knowing the person, but I was just kind of curious. Even right now, we're talking a year out before this program even does come into effect.
The way it works is when they were doing it pre-K through 5, the SRO would meet with the teachers and basically schedule it around the teachers' free time, whatever part of the classroom that they had a block of 45 minutes or whatever, however long it was, they would schedule it throughout the week. And obviously it would change with snow days and everything else. I believe it would get pretty expensive for us to have. I don't know if it could be done, but if we had somebody else coming in on their off time, that's going to be at time and a half. And then union contracts are going to play into that, and we're going to be paying somebody a 3-hour minimum to come in to teach a class at a time and a half when if we had an SRO there, not only they're doing that throughout the week, because it's every day, the DARE classes. So not only if they're there, if an emergency happens while they're in the school, I think it's beneficial that way, having the actual school resource officer who's teaching the DARE class. Plus, they're building that rapport with the kids, and they see them throughout the day. Maybe if a student wanted to talk to them during DARE class, decide not to. The other good thing is they have an office right there at the school. I know Officer Bernard said students that come in to speak to her when she's at the school, and the same with Officer Pickard in the past. So it's just more opportunity for them to be able to meet up.
Just wondering as far as the ability to actually still have that program, even it just sounds like there's really not as much opportunity to have that program now. And I remember when Bernie first started doing the officer friendly thing, there wasn't no SROs at that point in time. He was just strictly officer friendly in the DARE. He was actually really focused on DARE. And he wasn't
He did a great job.
He wasn't the youngest guy on the staff either. He was actually one of the senior people at the time. Well, at that point probably not, but as it went through, and he still actually was very active with the DARE. Actually, really, promoted that.
Right till the day you left.
Absolutely, and a lot of that was outside activities too. DARE used to do a lot of things. But different world today, I do realize. So
I have one.
I will say outside activities. I have spoken just recently in communications with Officer Bernard and some of my sergeants about trying to increase some of the DARE programs that go on the weekends or the evenings. So trying to increase that because obviously we could use DARE to do. We do trips, as you guys know, but I would like to be able to increase that. So that is actually something that we're looking at. That's outside of school, outside activities.
And Bernie was really big on a lot of that stuff. Just it was very community based. Yep.
I'm sure there'll probably be some grant money around that too, somewhere along the way. I'm sure that we'll probably see something like that. My last question is, will we be providing a sweet Pinto wagon to the new SRO officer?
Remember that back in the day.
That's all I'm saying. That might be the
classic today.
I might have to apply if that happens.
Yeah, I think you might seriously
these
consider.
butter bars.
That's right. A sweet Pinto wagon.
Any other questions of the officers? I need a motion.
I'd make a motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Order passed, 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Appreciate
your
your support.
Appreciate it.
Good luck.
Next item, Twyla?
Order 2020, number 25, the manufactured mobile home park license for Avery Street Mobile Home Park Trust. Mr. Brown is applying for his first time manufactured mobile home park license for Avery Street. It's a new park he just purchased on behalf of Maine Home Buyer LC.
Any questions or comments associated with the topic? It's pretty straightforward associated with that.
If I may, I'm not sure if there's, now is that something that goes through the planning board, Don, as far as on that?
That was a mobile home park before.
It's not a new mobile home park. It's already been
Already
created.
Existing.
Yeah, it's existing.
Existing.
Change of hands.
So basically all it is just a change of ownership is what we're actually talking about.
But Dennis has to do an inspection still, and so at that time he goes through his list with the new owner, and then we give him the ordinance so he knows what to expect and to stay in compliance, that sort of thing.
So there's that local level with us, but there's also state requirements for mobile home parks that person's room.
I don't know about any states.
Well, there are, but not.
Not that we get into that.
No.
We just do our local. We have a local ordinance that's pretty extensive.
If they're putting in new sites or something like that, there's state requirements.
So basically, I guess to make sure it's right. I mean, it's already an existing park. It's basically just the idea of going through a different ownership. So the license needs to be
It's not transferable,
yeah.
and it expires May 1, so we'll have to renew it.
Yep. Now, you mentioned there was a checklist that Dennis needs to go through. Is that done prior to us approving it, or is this
Yep.
something that?
And he's already signed off, and the
Yes.
inspection certificate's in your file.
Is there a certain number of mobile homes in this park, and are they bound by anything in that? I was gonna say, I knew it wasn't a huge one, but are they bound by that?
There's 4 or 5.
And then it
or
can
something.
suddenly be 8?
The list of mobile homes and who are in them still has to go to the assessor, so that's been filed as well. And so the assessor has to sign off on this application as well. And so all of those requirements are met.
So
If
any
there were additions, enlarging, or adding
that would
spots.
go to the planning
Yes.
board, same as the other
Yeah.
one for Grimmels.
Right.
Right. That's why I was asking that.
Sounds pretty straightforward then.
I need a motion if that's the case.
Make a motion to adopt or accept.
I'll second that.
To approve?
To approve?
That's
Okay,
it.
that works fine too, yeah.
All right.
All right.
Those in favor?
All in favor?
Order passed
I was
5-0.
looking to see if there was a first reading on that. I missed Councilor Barnell on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And no public hearings required either on a transfer.
Yeah, we got a first reading.
That's what, I knew there was at least one on the agenda. So, next item, Twyla.
An ordinance 2020, number 26, to amend the chapter for medical marijuana establishments, section 10, 603, 605, and 606. This is a first reading. A roll call vote is required.
Make a motion for discussion.
Second.
I'll take the second for discussion. My ask is, anybody here able to summarize what we're actually seeing for the strikeouts and additions?
The first person, or the best person to summarize it would be Twyla. I happen to be down here the day everybody's going back and forth trying to figure out what all that licensing required now, and it was vague, and it's even seems to be vague for the applicants when it said, for example, evidence of didn't necessarily mean they need to bring the piece of paper in. So that's part of the reason for the wording changes. But Twyla would be the best source for.
Did it change anything, Twyla, or is it basically just clean up?
We just want to spell out what these applicants need to provide. When we put the word evidence, I mean, that could mean anything underneath the sun. But truly, we just want a copy of your application you filed with the state, not evidence that you filed an application with the state, meaning a copy of your check or something.
Yeah.
We spelled out what we really want to see, if it's applicable. And we use the definition in their rules for manufacturing medical marijuana. So we tried to make our definitions like their definitions, and we've added some of the definitions we didn't have in our ordinance, so we just copied them out of the state.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Does this actually affect any of the applications already in process? Did this change
No.
anything that would actually affect anything that we've already looked at or reviewed?
No. We're trying to clarify, though, what manufacturing medical marijuana, we want to clarify this, that it is an extraction process. And what I've discovered this past week or so is that if you are doing manufacturing medical marijuana, you don't have to have a specific manufacturing license from the state. That's covered under their caregiver cards. And so the state doesn't require an application, even though we say we want a copy of your state application.
Unless it's hazardous chemicals or something else, and then it does require a license.
Well, and it requires only a letter of intent at this point. So they haven't passed something at the state level to require the license still. This gentleman that you're talking about recently that's applied is Crystal Springs.
Yeah.
Right. And his will be one of those tier 2 with hazardous chemicals. So again, locally we require that manufacturing license, but the state does not at this time. They just require a letter of intent.
Organized confusion is what it is, basically, right?
We actually apparently allowed to, and are going a little bit beyond what the state is requiring.
It's still really confusing. I mean, reading through it, and you read through it, and you get different ideas. I mean, the idea whether manufacturing actually does incorporate the idea of cultivation, or if manufacturing is strictly the idea of manufacturing in the sense where you're actually taking that byproduct and actually making it. And the idea of, when it becomes manufacturing, that was, where the conditions as far as for, the approved kitchen, all the other things that actually go along with that. I mean,
In addition to this, what we have also done is separated out our inspection process for each of the departments, like the police department and the fire chief and the code enforcement. And so we've asked them to look into certain aspects of the application. So they'll be doing a little bit more investigation on those 3 levels before it comes back to you for approval.
And one of the questions that actually someone had asked me and I couldn't answer it would be the idea of if someone was to come in for a storefront, a retail of medical, and they had no interest in growing, would the application be, a conditional use that it was actually strictly for a storefront, not growing, so they wouldn't need all the charcoal? But that license basically states that they can grow. So how do you override that? Can you actually make a condition? So you almost have to go with the worst case scenario right to begin with, where if anybody is actually, so to speak, opening up a storefront, that they actually have to meet all the requirements just in case they decide to.
That's our local town thing doing
grow.
that.
Yeah, it's just very, very confusing a lot of times,
What is perhaps a stickling point down the road is manufacturing. Because not every zone is set up for that right now, and that's under consideration by the planning board again. That doesn't affect this, but it does affect somebody in the current application.
Zoning appropriately would solve that problem.
Yeah, to me, if we're doing this discussion, if this actually clarifies and makes toilet shops easier for this confusion, I'd say I'm all for it. But someone has to be somewhat in the know, right?
My question was more direct, in effect, as I saw Don, you raised one question on one definition. Is this the best amendment to that chapter?
I think so.
For now.
I
think
well, things are fluid.
The moving target is a problem.
Learning process completely.
Yeah.
We can amend this at any point in time,
Yes.
correct? So I think that's our we take solace in that if we are going based off the information that we have, the best information that we can make decisions on at this moment in time, knowing full and well that we can revisit. I know I'm thinking about that, and I know you let the genie out of the bottle. How do you get it back in? But I don't necessarily know that we're in any worse shape by doing this, and I don't think it opens up a Pandora's box.
No, as a matter of fact, there's probably, just looking at this, there are at least one organization in town that probably should be licensing it, is grow operation.
Yep.
By town regulation.
And one other thing that, if I may,
Sure.
And hopefully, we try to bring this up as much as in the public hearing as we can through the town, is knowing that it is a yearly license, and no matter how much an investment someone makes,
Yes.
it's a yearly renewal, and if there's actually enough complaints and concerns throughout the process, I just wonder what our legality is on that. If someone actually in good interests, in good faith, built a business in our community, and they spend $1 million on a business to make it happen, and then the next year comes up for renewal, what benchmark do we have to meet to actually deny that license again and not actually meet some type of legal fight? Because we didn't meet, what is the criteria for not renewing set in stone enough that we could actually go back and say these were the criteria, or if it's just our opinion is next year we shouldn't give you a license, would that actually be legally challenged? I don't know, it's a question.
Everything we based this on was comparable to a liquor license. It should be the same criteria.
You listed in here reasons for denial, correct? That's
you tell
part
us.
of.
We read
yes.
through it so much.
You did.
Yep.
So,
Is it actually? Do you feel, Twyla, that that's actually laid out well enough that?
The one thing that I would think could likely come up, if anything is going to come up, is odor.
So,
but what level of that is actually? You got two neighbors
There are
complaining.
stipulations in there for that too.
Yeah.
main licensed engineer has to
And
review
it's not
it.
supposed to be smelled over such and such a distance, and that's
with a new business like that and the new type of challenges that come with it, I also think too, as long as we're consistent in in the way in which we enforce, I think there's always going to be the chance that some business may want to challenge it. And I think that's it's part of this brave new world we're in.
Oh,
And so-
absolutely.
yeah, so it's,
Yeah, the ordinance.
I-
They're all
it does-
gonna-
yeah.
until they're challenged.
and it doesn't mean we have to stumble in blindly. We certainly could get a legal opinion because I think it's well worth, investigating that if we're talking about these things. But I also think that, we leave ourselves in pretty good shape if we're metering it out consistently across the board.
So we typically, for licensing, if there was I just want a different level. So, if you actually have a police concern where the police department does not want to renew it because of actually concerns.
Right.
That
Standard
would
of approval.
But, if you actually have, say, two neighbors that actually have come in and actually made complaints, at what point, at some point in time when you get there, you actually have to, it's really the only time that we have opportunity to enforce anything, right, is that yearly renewal, because during the year of the process, it's really hard to go in and actually make a much of a stink, right? But
What about a public safety concern, though? I think we have some latitude there. We're not bound by the 1-year mark. If there's
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I think it's a consistent behavior that has to,
Has to
and whatever
maintain,
goes with it,
yeah.
yeah.
I was just kind of curious, because, people, this isn't a hot dog stand where yearly someone actually loses, a $2,000 investment. This is something that people are investing some serious, capital. So, if it came up to the next year.
From what I understand what I have seen is that there is a significant equipment investment, knowing that they have to comply with the regulations.
And even as, is it still doable as a council that, whether we're the council or someone else, that they may just go into a year where they'll actually determine that they don't allow that type of business in the community and actually stop it altogether? What's the idea of genie in, genie out? How does that actually play out? I don't know how that works out. But
From day one of the things that we've always said is the fact is the market will adjust associated with that. Let it determine the number. I've heard it.
Yeah.
I've heard it criticized by other communities that we actually didn't set a number that we were willing to accept. The fact that I still stand by the fact that anybody that's going to go through our formalized process isn't your problem child. It's the person that's doing it unregulated.
Yep.
Well, that's with medical. It's still out there with adult use, which we haven't done anything with.
Right.
We'll
we
see.
may not ever. That's the thing, right?
Right. And there's still caregivers that are never going to be elevated to anything that we're talking about here, too.
Good enough.
We have a motion. We had a second.
Yes. Now it's a roll call vote. Are you
Please.
you ready? Okay. Councilor Albert?
Yes.
Councilor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Councilor Ward?
Yes.
Councilor Lunt?
Yes.
Councilor Fellows?
Yes.
5 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Next.
Well, Rochelle, I'd like to thank you for my new business venture.
So
Hot
hearing
dog
is
stands,
next
not
time?
marijuana.
Hearing would be next week.
Yeah, we'll
That could be-
advertise
that
this,
could be a
and we'll put it
moneymaker.
on your next agenda for a second reading.
Thank you.
Okay. And next item is other business, council committee reports.
School.
So I went to the technology workshop a couple weeks back. Some good stuff. Lots of good talk about how they're going to try to do some things, stretch their dollars out. I also made it a point, because I know that last year budget cycle I brought up the idea of a local IT position created here to split between municipality and the school, because I think it's important. I think we've had some challenges with our IT partner and contractors, and so that gave us pause in a few areas. And so coming into this year, I just kind of put the feelers out there. I think it's worth discussion with the council. We can bring that up. But I did get initial signals that it's something that could be receptive to, and it could be a great partnership between the town and the school, continue that relationship. So more to come, but that's what we got there.
Can you also reach out to the chair to actually give her an update on what we heard tonight from the
Yeah.
police department?
Absolutely.
If nothing else.
Yep.
If
I'll
they
be-
haven't had that level with I think they ought to hear that we blessed it, what we actually talked about, knowing that that'll be next Monday night for the next round.
I'll be at the meeting. I'll make sure to reach out to her before and then maybe come there and just
Yeah.
kind of do a quick over and over. Can do.
Thank you. Planning?
The last meeting, they just had case 20-1, which was Delightful Heights. It's a new retail store, medical marijuana retail store at 8 Main Street. the planning board accept that the application is complete and set a hearing for the 13th and a site visit. Also, they are having a hearing on the 13th for the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, which is firmed up now and subject to whatever happens at a hearing.
Where's 8 Main Street? Again, I'm trying to...
Next to Frank's.
The old credit union? Okay, that's what okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, man, really?
Next to that parking lot.
Yep. Okay.
LDC.
Meeting coming up. Nothing's happened since my last one, but we do have a meeting coming up next week or so stay tuned.
I would echo that for the Conservation Commission. They meet later in the month as well. Recreation.
Oh, I'm sorry, napping over here. The meeting that's coming up here, I didn't attend, but I did attend the Moxie, and we did talk a little bit about Recreation Committee's department, some of the things that worked well, some of the things that didn't, and so that's still moving forward. But the rec, I talked about the Winterfest earlier, so that's probably the thing that they put there.
Anything different with Moxie year 2? I wasn't able to
They
make
have
the
some.
meeting.
They have some really good ideas that I'm not going to let out of the bag yet. Pretty excited about vision and focus. I think they're taking some of their own kind of wrap-up ideas from some of the things that worked well, some of the things they'd like to do differently, and they're really being honest about those things and giving them a lot of thought and a lot of pause about how do we want to go with this. But there's been some great dialogue. I was glad I attended.
Was there any gaps or anything that's needing for assistance? I know they were reaching out to everybody that was on board last year for the key components.
No, they seem to get full commitment. I heard they got the guy from the council chair to help out with the parade again. So sounds to me.
As long as I have a Carlton, we are solid. Yeah.
So my understanding is that some of the same players, the key players, are in place, and it's more of the mission that they sort of started to craft from last year. So all good things. More to come on that.
The only reason I ask on that is the fact that we've made a commitment to actually keeping the resources to be able to have them succeed. And going into year 2, having a solid year last year, I would like to just continue that flow.
There was a large body of folks there. I felt very comfortable
Good.
that that's probably not going to dwindle as we get closer. It may even grow.
It's hard not to drink Julianne's Kool-Aid.
True.
I mean, she's just got a contagious
She in fact
enthusiasm.
It's apparent that it spilled over onto some other folks because there was a lot of great dialogue.
Great.
To be honest, great dialogue.
Great. County, we have nothing. Library.
Nothing new to report?
Water.
No meeting since the last one I went to. Their meeting is the second Tuesday of the month at 5:30 if someone would like to attend. They're getting used to somebody being there.
Right.
And I won't be.
I appreciate that. Town managers, we're going to ixnay tonight with the manager being out sick.
Get better, Diane.
Appointments, next item.
Order 2020, number 27, to appoint the warden for the March 3rd, 2020 presidential preference primary. Rick Roberts is recommended.
Oh, man, him again.
Yeah, I know. So that
I got a motion for at least, let's do that one for discussion.
grudgingly, I will second. Grudgingly.
All right, that's enough discussion. All in favor, Rick Roberts.
Order passed 5-0.
If he doesn't do it, nobody
Thank you,
does.
Rick.
He does a great job. We're lucky to have him.
Yes, he
We
does.
Don't let
very,
it go
very
to his
lucky.
head, though. It's only as good as his
Yeah.
last election.
Wait until the red dot's off before you say that next time.
Next item.
Councilor Communications.
So at this point, I wanted to go ahead at Twyla's behest here to talk about, we have some things coming up. The state of Maine Democratic presidential primary, the Republican presidential primary election on March 3rd. Would like to go ahead and say these ballots are available online and right here in the town office. If you would still like to come in, take a peek at them prior to. Also, the nice piece about this is that those who are undeclared at this time will have an option to come in and take a peek as well and talk about some things. There's also a question 1. I think folks can go in and investigate that and make a decision about it. I'd like to talk about the places for the caucus dates for Lisbon residents. Democratic caucus is going to be at the Town Hall Conference Room right here, Sunday, March 8th. And the doors open at noontime for registration. Meeting begins at 1 p.m. Republican caucus is in that. Let me go back to that. Democrat. That's for Lisbon residents only. The Republican caucus is going to be in the Lewiston Middle School, and that's going to be a county-wide caucus, so that's why it's in Lewiston. That's Saturday, March 7th. Doors open at 10 a.m. for registration. Meeting is at noon. So if you have any questions about any of that, I'm sure you can speak to either the Democratic, the local office, as well as the Republican office, or you can just come into the town office here. That's all I got on that.
That's from 10 to noon. So
10 to noon. I'm sorry. Did I
It'll
do
be
that wrong?
meeting
I
in-
did, didn't I?
in between there. So it's over
For
at
the
noon.
Republican?
Yeah, the Republicans will open the doors at 10 a.m. and I'm sure their meetings will happen prior to noon because they plan to be done at noon. It said.
Meeting until noon. You're right. I missed that. Thank you.
Just want to point that out.
And this is state election.
Yeah.
Caucuses.
Yes.
Any other communications?
I just have one other question. Meeting last night, we were discussing about the idea of the potential planning board application for the Main Street business. And so when is the public hearing on that? That is
13th.
the 13th. And people are just questioning the idea. How does that actually, I know the butters get notified, but
Yes,
do...
actually, I think Dennis has notified most of the town.
most of the, but that, is that actually, and people are just wondering what if anything happens downtown, people wonder how they get involved or know the details and facts and stuff. But the biggest thing to know is coming from the planning
Well,
board.
they have the right to come to the site visit as well. And the site visit, I believe, is at 6 p.m. that same night, and at 7 p.m. is the standard planning board meeting, and the hearing will be held there then.
So if anybody has any questions about that, they can actually attend the planning board meetings, so they'll get more information than just a public hearing.
Right.
They'll actually get the details potentially
Right.
of the application.
Mhm.
And the due process of that, I mean, and I guess one of the questions is if there is concerns for or against, I mean, those would actually be heard by the planning board that night, and
Yes.
that does affect the decision upon how that goes
Well,
through to a certain point.
Potentially can affect it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just want to put that publicly. So thank you, Don.
The thing to note, though, that's a conditional use application. It is in a zone that allows it. So therefore, there has to be certain conditions that can be met. It can't just be turned down.
Correct. Yeah.
So
Any other communications? I have a couple under housekeeping. We have a couple more finance committee applications. It's not on tonight's agenda because I'm still confident that shaking a few more trees, we can round out that pool to be able to get it to be able to flourish in the first year, putting it back on. Manager eval. Cassie will have information for that, trying to actually time with knowing that you would be here. The fact that the meeting in first March would be what she'd be looking for the time frame on that. The banners project, I spoke to her briefly on that as well on the way in tonight, and still working with getting specifics of what Legion may be looking for to be able to move that forward. That's what I had for housekeeping. So, next item, Twyla. It was audience participation response for new items. Anybody wishing to speak, please come forward and state your name, sir. I haven't seen you forever.
My name is Richard Nettle from Lisbon Falls, Maine. I live in Colonial Gardens on Summer Street, 76 Summer Street, Lot 23. And I've heard that a lot of the councilmen would like to know more about what I was thinking about as far as putting here in the town, and it's long overdue, for the greatest generation that fought in World War II and gave their lives and for this country, this great country here of ours. And what I was thinking, and this has come up, and it has to do, again, the center part would be for the sons of Martha Coombs. 3 of her boys were killed. One, I believe he was lost in Alaska, and that would have been Corporal Tech Robert Monfort, and his other two brothers, Staff Sergeant Clarence Coombs and Staff Sergeant Ralph W. Coombs. They were both killed. From what I've gotten, one was killed in Lisbon, and that he was in the 103rd Division on January 16th, 1945. That would have been Ralph. And the other brother, which is the oldest son, was killed October 22nd, and he was a gunner in the belly of the plane in October 22nd, October 1943. That would be the center part. My plan was like, you got some big stones, you kind of cut it away, and you put a plaque on each one. And something similar to like we got down here across from the high school. We got one that they put their names in, people from the town. I think it was Lawrence, Noisy, put that there. And he had a bunch of other people or something on that idea. And the other part I was thinking was we'd have two flags, the American flag on the right, state of Maine flag on the left, and we'd put maybe to mark all four branches of the service at that time, because the Air Force didn't exist. They did that in the other branches until about 1945. That's when the Air Force came into existence, and we would put like benches over there, and the people that served in the Marines would be on one. You could even have the emblems of each branch of the service in there, and you'd put four of them around all four branches at that time. All the people of this town that died in World War II, in either Japan or fighting that idiot in Germany, and put their names over there that fought. Maybe put a star after their name if they were killed in the war, so we would know. And you could either put tar or something around it.
Where did you say where you were actually proposing putting this memorial?
Well, what I was thinking, of course, we could probably put a committee together. It'll probably be different than what I'm describing, and that's fine. I was thinking if we owned some land up there, the parking lot where the old mill used to be in Lisbon Center, we could put it on that side of the river, or we could go across over here where I believe we got some land from Herbert Miller. I don't know if that piece is ours or not, but we could go either there. There's another place, but I don't know if we can. I think that's been bought, and it would have been downtown or something like that, where the old Rumble Mill is.
Mr. Netto?
What?
Is the Coombs family the same family that's actually after the Legion?
Yes, that's what it's named. That's what they're named from. Is these sons.
Have you reached out to them at all with any of your ideas?
Not yet. Not yet. I could reach out. I'd have to contact. I know somebody I can contact right away, and he could get me to her.
Could you?
Yeah,
Could you
I
just
can
try
do that.
Try to formalize associated with that? Because I don't want to slow your roll. I think
Yeah.
Good idea
I
for
know.
consideration. Let's get their feedback, if you could.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to, put a committee together. I'll talk with her first before we do anything.
Okay.
Okay?
Appreciate it.
That'd be great.
Thank you, sir.
Yes. I got one other thing. I've tried over here at the high school. I know we have a program with small kids, but I tried it over here. I waited over a month. I got no response or anything. But I'd like to go into the school, or even if I had to, go where I live and read to the kids, the younger, the older kids, like, say, first grade up to maybe up to the 7th grade. I got even some stuff I've written myself. I mean, I'd let them look at it first.
Talking a voluntary reading program?
Right. To the kids, because I think they need it.
Yeah,
I think they need it.
I would actually
That's where my problem
Start
is.
with the super's office
Yeah,
to be able to
that's
find
where
out
my
what options
problem
are.
is. I don't seem to get anything there.
What
The
what
other
I would
op-
say on that one, Mr. Netto, is that if there are specific requirements associated with anything for volunteering within the school.
Oh, I
So-
know, I went through it.
But start there, and if we can, Diane should be able to assist you with that.
The other option might be the library.
That's what I was thinking too.
Right.
Yeah, I've
Right.
talked with them too. And again, these are small kids. You need about 800 words is about all you're going to get to them kids because their attention span is real small.
So it may be the best of ideas, but what you're hearing in that application is maybe that you're thinking too much, that you may have to tailor your plan to what the library can provide or the school can provide.
Well, I could.
I
I mean, if I was going to read to them kids, I would read them little books there that have the
Sure.
pictures with a few words on it. That's
Yep.
what I would do.
Yep.
I mean, the older kids, well, it's not so much like that. You'd be getting into maybe like those books there, them detective stories there that have been around since the 20s, I think they were, and the Hardy Boys, or they got the girls that somebody wrote again about. That's
what I would say on that, Mr. Netto, is the fact that
Yeah.
you are impressing me to actually be somebody that wants to find a way to be able to get involved and actually volunteer in a time frame where it's actually hard enough to find volunteers. I think that
Yes.
working with Diane, we should be able to at least find something to be able to help with your interests.
Okay.
Thank you,
I
sir.
mean, because I resigned from the Conservation
Yep.
Committee because I do have a mild form of dementia. I've been in there about 8 years, and I figured, well, it's time because we finished up with that program over there. It was time for me to move on a little bit. I mean,
Sure.
it'll be probably a long time before it gets me,
Thank you, sir.
but I mean, I won't beat it.
Thank you, Mr. Nato.
Thanks for coming out tonight.
We appreciate your time.
Anybody else? Next item, 12.
Nothing for executive session. Order 2020 number 28 to adjourn.
Make that motion.
I got a second, please?
Second.
All in favor?
5-0. Adjourned.
Thank you all for coming out.
Unsafe travels. 'Cause we're
Thank
gonna
you.
be-
Yeah, have a great trip.
2 meetings I'll miss. And that, so
How long are you out there for?
you can excuse me or not, whatever.
No, we're excuse you. We're not going to kick you out yet.
So when you say 2 meetings, so the fact
next
that,
two.
so the March meeting you will miss too?
First one, yeah.
Okay, so I can push it back